using this money, and everyone's doing it a little bit differently. So because of that, we end up running into a lot of different problems within these schools. And I'm going to kind of run through some of the most common problems that schools who try to implement CLIL face. The biggest one is a lack of curriculum and no standard or widely accepted textbook or materials. So David will talk a little bit about this. There are textbooks that are starting to be produced by some counties. There are definitely resources online. So these things exist, but it's very different from like your English textbook where there's one or two different companies that every school around Taiwan tends to use. That's because there's no like standard textbook that's been made and tested and proven to work and used around Taiwan. So as a result, we end up with these questions and these problems of how can we produce consistent content across schools, across counties? And then also, if we don't have this type of like standard textbook, how can teachers be expected to create their own materials or curricula from scratch? Because a lot of these teachers have regular other demands and classes they have to do, so they don't have a lot of free time to create an entire curriculum. And then the lastly, and the biggest problem, which addresses one of the questions you asked before, is how can we assess students in these CLIL classes, especially when the year-end tests are still in Chinese? This is one of the biggest problems with CLIL that we're still thinking about and we're still learning how to address it. Because you'll find that although these CLIL classes are entering schools and we're starting to do more with CLIL, the actual standard tests that students are preparing for haven't changed. And that's in part because not every school around Taiwan is doing CLIL, it's just a handful of them. So because of that, these content teachers still feel a lot of pressure to be preparing students to meet the demands of the Chinese test that they're going to have to take at the end of the year. And so it gets a little bit hard in that sense to try and figure out how we can assess how well these CLIL classes are doing. And yeah, it's definitely just an issue that we can talk about more at a later time, but it's just something for you to keep in mind and kind of for you to think about. If you go into a CLIL class and are wondering how to assess your students, maybe it'll give you some comfort to know that we all don't really have a good way of assessing CLIL classes yet because they're so new. Another issue is a lack of time. How can we find the time to meet and lesson plan for CLIL classes when so many teachers are involved? If you've taught CLIL before, you might know that there's a lot of different parties. There's maybe you yourself, an ETA or ETF. Maybe there's another foreign teacher. Maybe there's the local English teacher. Then there's also maybe the content teachers. And so when you have a lot of cooks in the kitchen, it's really hard to find time when you all have time to lesson plan, which can definitely cause a little bit of problems or a little bit of stress on teachers and on your day in the school. The next one is a lack of training for CLIL, about CLIL for schools, which causes a lack of understanding of CLIL. So again, that question of how can we balance this content and language? And are we supposed to simplify content so it can be taught in English? Because each school is kind of doing their own interpretation of CLIL, we don't really know how each school is coming up with this balance. And that's definitely something that a lot of schools struggle with. So I'm really looking forward to hearing what Sia has to say in the next section about this topic. Some other problems, a lack of language proficiency. The question becomes, can low-level students keep up in a CLIL class? And also, can content teachers teach English when they doubt their own English ability? This is definitely something that content teachers feel very self-conscious about, and it's definitely a problem that they run into when you're starting to develop a CLIL course. Another issue is a lack of experience co-teaching. A lot of these content teachers might not have experience co-teaching before, which can be something really difficult to adjust to if you've never done. Of course, you yourselves have had experience and some local English teachers have had experience, but not all of the content teachers you'll be working with have that type of experience. And the very last known issue is kind of a lack of data, where a lot of teachers might feel hesitant about supporting these new CLIL classes when we don't really have the data to support their benefits for students' English learning. How will these students who are in CLIL classes now look several years down the road after having 5 years of CLIL? how will that affect their scores? This is something that definitely is in the back of a lot of people's minds as we're starting this new journey towards CLIL. So you might be wondering, if there are so many problems with CLIL, why are we doing it, and are there any benefits? Well, there definitely are some known benefits to CLIL. One of the ones being that when you have so many teachers together, putting their heads together, it really does facilitate collaboration and innovation between teachers, which can lead to some really diverse and interesting learning opportunities for students, especially when you have the funds for it. A lot of these CLILs have that funding from the government, so they can really have the ability to do more than they might be able to do in a normal English class because that money is there. In addition, over time, CLIL classes we've started to see students having less anxiety about speaking English when there's more exposure to it in different classes outside of English class. And also, some schools have started to report that if they've had a successful CLIL program at their school 1 year, the next year they've seen increased admission. So CLIL can be a good kind of promotion for schools who are looking to increase their admissions. But mainly, the biggest thing is that CLIL classes still remain one of the easiest and most time-efficient ways to increase English exposure at schools, which is ultimately the goal for the government as they're trying to move towards the bilingual by 2030 goal. So lastly, some takeaways from my short introduction. The big thing I want to say is that you're not alone in this, especially if you're at a CLIL school. This move towards CLIL is relatively new, and we're all learning how to do it together. And because of that, everyone's experiences teaching CLIL might look a little bit different because every school's approach to CLIL is different. So all of that being said, as your advisors, the three of us, we really want to do our best to help you this year in this movement towards CLIL, because we know it's hard and we know that there will be problems that you'll experience, just as well as there will be a lot of successes that you might have in your classroom. And we really want to help you as best we can. But this will require your help in keeping us up to date on your specific needs and questions, and just being transparent with us about what's going on in your school. Because like we said, everyone's experience will look very, very different. So just tell us your experience and exactly what you need, and we'll try our best to provide you with whatever that help may be. So this is the end of my short introduction, and I'm going to turn it over to Sia.
Okay, thank you, Deja, and thank you for the introduction for CLIL's, the current CLIL situation in Taiwan. And so, as everybody knows, that each district, each county, or even schools or teachers, how they interpret CLIL and the content and the language use are very different from one and another. So today I'm going to just give you a quick review about CLIL, and then share with you one of the bilingual education or CLIL-friendly model. It's called SciUp. So Deja, can you help me? Thank you. So before we jump into SciUp, I know it's another new term that you need to figure out what does that mean. So before we jump into that, let's take a look of different types of CLIL models that we currently categorize. So it's different from the time you spend, also like the content coverage and how much of the language balance between language and content. So that's definitely like there's language lab. It's more of like a language class. On the other spectrum is that subject-led. It's like more partial immersion, and 50% of curriculum that is taught in target language, but at the same time you are also learning the target language. So it depends. Each school may implement it differently. So with these CLIL models and how each district or school or classroom implemented, you will find the situation everybody is facing is very different, very diverse. So like Deja just shared, of course, keep us up to date, and then sometimes we can help you with some kind of challenges that you face in your classroom. Next, please. Now, doesn't matter what kind of CLIL type model that in your school is using, or like with how they implement it. There are 4 important content four important key components in CLIL models education. So first one is the content, because they're trying to integrate the content and also the language to learn both. So the content has to be very specific and it's very comprehensible. So that involves a lot of negotiation, communication between teachers. Now, when you are teaching the language, you need to make sure that it's something that is something that student is digestible and they are able to interact with. So the important communication interaction piece is in there in the CLIL models. And just like I said, when you are learning the content and learning the language, the student must be able to comprehend what they are learning and how to produce how to communicate what they are learning in the target language. So they have to utilize their thinking skill in order to digest all the knowledge they receive. Now, with all of that in the background, they also are learning the culture that the language brings and how people use different language to communicate. So these are four important components in CLIL. It doesn't matter it's hard CLIL or soft CLIL. Now keep this in mind, because later when we're talking about SciUp, because you will see a lot of overlapping. Deja, please. So many of you were asking, how do we balance language and content? Because it looks like sometimes language overtake the content portion, and sometimes the content is too difficult that you are not able to use the target language to learn. So SciUp model is one of the most efficient and research-based instructional strategy for English language learner or for any level of education that you can implement in your CLIL classroom. Deja, can you please? Thank you. So what is SciUp? So SciUp is short for Shelter Instruction Observation Protocol. It's an instructional strategy. Basically, they implement the language portion and combine with the content and help English language learner to learn the academic language. Now, let me see. And okay, so let's go to the next slide, please. Okay, so a little bit background about SciUp. So SciUp been existing for quite a while, and there are 8 key components. So you will see like there are lesson delivery, preparation, building background of learning, comprehensible input, all of these 8. Now you will see a lot of overlapping, like the content, the culture. So because SciUp is a very big topic, and I don't want to overwhelm you with all the different terms and what is in it and what you have to make, how do you implement it today. Maybe we can talk about that later on. So today we're going to focus on just lesson delivery, because this is most relevant to you for now, and also this is the first step that you will encounter. Next, please. Thank you. So SciUp with all the 8 components, the most important thing, and that's why we're doing these workshops, why we're doing these training, is about teachers and how you deliver the lessons. And when you are in a classroom working with your LETs or content teachers, a lot of time that you will find, if you want to have a successful CLIL experience and implementing SciUp, you need to spend time to co-plan, co-teach, and co-assess and reflect. And then this is a cycle that it never stops. It goes on. But like Deja just shared, there's a lot of obstacles on the way. For example, lack of time, lack of resources, or there's lack of training. All those things are quite often, and it doesn't matter where you are actually. So this is the process that it's been laid out, but how each school or each team implement it, it's very different. And so it's a process of negotiation and also collaboration with your teachers. Next, please. So just a quick review. I believe that you probably already learned about this from last year's workshop or previously. There are 6 models of co-teaching models, and each one of them, I won't go into the nitty-gritty of each type. If you're interested, later when we share this slide, you are able to read it on this website. They share a very clear outline for each one, and they have their pros and cons, so you can take a look. But each one of the models, they have specific type of like instructional strategies between you and your co-teacher. Now, each one of them depends on your comfort level, your co-teacher's comfort level, and also like your each other's training. It relies heavily on your on your collaboration and trust. Now, if you are just new and then you are not so sure, a lot of time what you will see or you will experience yourself is more like one teach, one observe, or one teach, one assist. So it doesn't mean that you are not doing any work. On the other hand, it's actually helping the co-teacher to do either classroom management or making sort of like remedy lessons for specific students or classroom behavior control. So a lot of time you will see this happen quite a lot. But gradually, when you are more comfortable to take over, or when you have developed a relationship, have a higher level of trust between teachers, then sometimes you will see team teaching or parallel teaching or station teaching. And alternative teaching is probably like in the middle of the spectrum. So these are different type of teaching model. But again, this relies heavily on your co-planning and also your trust between teachers and how much you understand the curriculum. Next, please. So a lot of you share that someone know CLIL, someone know about this, and how some of you say you probably are anxious knowing like how to implement it or how to start. So like I emphasized earlier, communicate with your co-teachers is very important because that's how you figure things out and you know the teaching content. And a lot of time, co-planning require your communication with your co-teacher so you can learn about what students are learning, what students' learning needs, and also like how can you prepare and what's their expectation of you. Now, when you communicate and you know all the things I just mentioned, and then you are able to work with your co-teacher to identify the content and also language objectives of that specific lesson. And don't forget that this is an ongoing process. So a lot of time, it takes a lot of time and energy to try to figure these things out. But most importantly is that you need to keep what your student needs in mind when you are doing all of this. Then when you are planning, don't think of like you have to cover it all. You just need to take a bite size. So maybe the students need to learn how to pronounce vowel sound. So maybe with your teacher, you can negotiate, or maybe we can create a mini lesson for this group of students or for the whole class. So that is something that you will need to communicate with your teacher because you might know something that your head teacher doesn't know. Now, after that, depends on your comfort level and your readiness, and also your co-teacher, your local teacher's comfort level and readiness. Then you will decide, okay, are we going to do teaming teaching or are we going to one teach, one assist? So that all depends on your relationship with your co-teacher. Now, after that, you understand the goal and then you know what's your role or expectation. Then you share the responsibility to take on the student's learning challenge. But again, a lot of time this takes practice, and I believe that a lot of us, including myself, even I teach many years, I'm still trying to figure things out because working with a different person is always a challenge. So that takes time, and it's always try and error. then you just keep going on this cycle all the time. But in the end, the students are the students learning success is our main goal. Next, please. So yes, so that's my portion. Thank you, everybody. David.
You can go ahead and share your screen, David.
I will. All right, so I'm covering the last section before we take a break. I'll kind of run through what I'll be talking about. So my section is kind of in address to questions of examples and resources. So I found some examples. Here's some video examples. All of these things are linked into the PowerPoint. So we'll just touch on things today, but I encourage you to go to these links. You just click on the screenshot and it'll take you to the websites. But the first two examples are from this website by NTUE, an MOE project about immersion English. And there's lots of videos of different class subjects being taught in English, usually by local teachers. So I have a PE example, a math example, a life science example that is from an ETA from last year, and then a couple of resources, a website about textbooks that are created in Taipei that are free to download, a website from the European Union with full lesson plans with PowerPoints and worksheets and videos and activities that you can download, and a website with a lot of books for professional development if you want to learn more about CLIL and how it works, especially in a European context where it came from. And then we'll take a break. So, like I said, going back, the first examples are from this website, which has, I don't know, like 50 videos of classes, of content classes being taught in English. So it's not so much of a bilingual in terms of, well, I guess some of the videos have lots of Chinese, but it's worth checking out because as far as I'm concerned, they're not really staged examples. I trust that they're actually like how those teachers teach. You know, they're not perfect, but I feel like they're real, so that's worth checking out. So let's take a look at the first one. It's a PE example from Jai. And what I would like you to do, we're kind of focused on positive. We've already covered things, you know, challenges in CLIL, but I'll just play these for you and we won't really discuss them. We'll save the discussion for after the break when we have our breakout discussion groups. But one thing that I'd like you to do is to take note of at least one success or positive that you see in each video, or think about how you might be able to do something similar. Maybe you can't compare that to what you will be doing because you maybe don't fully understand your context yet, but maybe how you could do something that you saw in your last year's context. I won't be playing the whole video. Usually they're between 8 and a full 40-minute video. I'll just play usually the intro and an example of an activity, maybe a minute or two per lesson. But again, I recommend going back and watching the full videos if you are so inclined. So let's watch some of this PE video and hopefully you're able to hear it.
Do the warm-up first. Warm-up. Wingspan first.
Wingspan.
Second time.
I hope it's not lagging.
转一下弯，高踢高踢高踢高踢。
第四排中目 ，OK， 中目。
对啊，他们已经那个中央舞了。小 baby 小飞机。
Okay, put down.
我的手。
Put down. Put down your hands and face me.
Turn right.
Okay, ready?
So
One,
forgive the
2,
leg,
3,
but we can
4,
still get the main
5,
points.
6, 7, 8, 9,
You
10.
can see in this video they're doing a PE warm-up, a body physical warm-up,
7, 8, 9, 10.
and they're stretching different parts of their bodies and then counting to 10 as they do the stretch.
6, 7, 8, 9, 10. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10.
And then here's an example of one of the activities.
Okay,
我又不会带你们说话。
line one, come here. Line two,
第二跑道，
line three, line four.
第四跑道。
Okay, look at me. First of all, is thing about
用
rabbit,
学兔子跳，
rabbit
学兔子跳。Point, point, point.
jumping. Okay,
Point,
okay,
point.
ready. And when you finish, just go to the last one. Okay, okay. 好，做完了就跑到最后一
哦，
个。
好，干脆帮你搬。
OK，
好了，开始。
ready.
And if you notice, I think the teacher kind of lost confidence in his ability to explain in fully English. He was demonstrating though, and then at the end he's like, "Well, I'm going to do it in Chinese just in case," especially in a class like PE where there might be safety issues involved. I think that's perfectly okay. Let's look at another example. This
Let's do the warm up.
is a math class, and this is a teacher that I just stumbled across this video, but Winnie was an advisor several years back, and she teaches in a public elementary now. This is a math class. Oops. So she's talking about shapes, and here's an example that she did at the end.
What do you see? How many shapes? Everybody's gonna say, what do you see? How do you see? How many blah blah blah? Say. Decompose. Yeah, decompose. But we're not going to decompose today. So you say one circle.
And if you notice, she wrote one and then drew a circle, as she's not concerned with them being able to spell circle. Just be able to say it and recognize it.
Next one. How many triangles? Are you ready? Ready. 1, 2, 3. No, I want to be back. 1, 2. Alice? 1, 2. What's there? Okay. 3 circles. Okay. 1, 2.
So the game keeps going. She ends up handing out little whiteboards, just laminated white pieces of paper, and then each student will write their number and then draw a picture of the shape. So it's teaching shapes. Obviously, there's counting as well. I especially liked where she had them count 1, 2, 3 shapes. And then I also noticed, although she didn't do this, each shape was a different color in the PowerPoint, and so she could have added color practice as well, you know, like purple, whatever the purple was, blue triangle or whatever. So one thing I want you to pay attention to or think about is ways that CLIL classes are or can be similar to English classes. I think we often focus on how they're different, but usually, as far as I'm concerned, they're often, you know, in the same sort of realm. And the last example before we take a break is a life science class about the life cycle of a butterfly.
Simon says touch your ears. Simon says touch your forehead. Simon says touch your cheeks. Simon says put your hands on your table. Good morning, class. Oh, Andy, I need to hear you. Good morning, class. Good morning, class. I am so happy to see you. Roger, let's go in quickly. Brian, come in quickly. So we have been learning all about class dojo points. Class dojo. Class dojo.
So I think this is first.
What do you? I'm going to be giving class dojo, Brian, sit down. I'm going to give class dojo points to the friends who are watching me. Ooh, you know, just like Elsa. I see Elsa's watching me. I'm going to give her a point. I'm going to give dojo points to the friends who are listening. Ooh, I noticed Viola is listening. I'm going to give her a point. I'm going to be giving points to the friends who are. Yeah. You have the PowerPoint?
Yeah.
Today, we are going to learn about the butterfly life cycle. Repeat after me. Butterfly life cycle. Butterfly life cycle. Butterfly life cycle. Listening. Thank you, Brian. Apple, class.
Yes.
And you know the hungry caterpillar wanted to eat a lot. because or he wanted to change, or it, you don't know what it is. He wanted to change. So today, we're gonna learn about how the caterpillar changed. So repeat after me. I can name the four stages of the butterfly life cycle.
So he introduces the names of the stages, egg and caterpillar. Then there's a song. Then they play a game.
Okay, so today we're gonna play a game, but we need the four stages. So now first comes the second comes the
Making physical gestures associated with each stage.
fourth comes the. There we go. So today we're gonna play rock, paper, scissors. Say rock, paper, scissors.
Rock, paper, scissors.
So we are all, everybody, very good for your eyes, Claire. Thank you, Thomas. Thank you so much, Chapman, for your eyes. Thank you for looking for your eyes. Thank you much. We're all gonna start as a tiny little egg. So we're gonna be talking quietly. I need another egg. So I need to find another egg. Another egg. To find another egg. Teacher.
Yeah.
Are you an egg?
Yeah.
Are you an egg? So I'm gonna come. Are we the same?
Yeah. Thank you.
Same, Andrew. Thank you. So we're gonna go rock,
Paper, scissors.
oh,
I'm sorry. One more time.
rock, paper, scissors, shoot.
Rock, paper,
Scissors, shoot. Oh, who won?
I will.
So I'm still an egg. I'm still an egg, but you are a caterpillar. You are a caterpillar.
So I'd never seen this like rock, paper, scissors played this way. I mean, rock, paper, scissors is a game that I've seen in a lot of English classes. But basically, you go through the life cycle of the butterfly through rock, paper, scissors. If you win, you graduate to the next stage, and the loser stays at that stage. You have to find someone who's the same stage, and so if you've made it to butterfly, then that means you've won 4 games of rock, paper, scissors. So that's pretty creative. But again, look at the whole video of each of these, and also look at some of the other videos if you have a need. I have lots of examples. Before we take a break, I want to go through some of these websites as well. This is New Taipei City self-edited CLIL bilingual teaching materials, and these are downloadable textbooks, and they're super cute, and they are downloadable. They have different grade levels, and they're pumping them out super fast. I think they started this last year, and there's already life, health and PE, health, physical education, nature, science, art, and music books. Not a full curriculum for all grade levels, so it kind of depends. Like, for example, this example of life curriculum, they have a first semester grade 1 and grade 2 life science textbooks, but they're free and they're super cute. And so you can click on that and go to the website and download those and take a look if you're inclined. This website is sponsored by the European Union because they're the ones that CLIL kind of started in the EU. And this is a bunch of different lesson examples that you can download the worksheets and the videos and the PowerPoints and everything of all these different lesson examples that are geared for a primary and secondary audience. So lots of different topics, and you can definitely get good examples and ideas from there. And finally, this is CLIL for Children, another European Union sponsored project. And here there are lesson examples, but there's lots of books like textbooks, I imagine, being used in professional development classes that talk about what is CLIL, where does it come from. There's lots of research in there about all the different countries doing CLIL and how the results that they've gotten, how CLIL works, how people are doing it. And so there's a lot of good professional development resources in there you can feel free to take a look at. And if you do end up looking through any of these materials, feel free to send me a message and we can talk about it if you have any questions, but we won't go into detail about those today. Instead, we will take our break. And one thing about taking a break, it'll be 10 minutes, but don't exit the meeting. Just turn off your camera, mute your mic, because we're going to be putting you into breakout groups. And so if you leave the meeting, then we won't be able to do that. So take a 10-minute break, come back at 10:30, and stay in the group, just mute. Karina has a question. Karina.
I actually did not have a question. I pressed the wrong button when I was turning off the camera.
Okay, well, we'll see you in 10 minutes.